The death row inmate scheduled to be executed on February 13th. And Greg Malnory, one of the victims in this case, were co-workers on a 7,000-acre sod farm in Charlotte County, Florida. If you're not familiar with sod farms, it's simply a place that produces patches of grass with soil, which can be bought at Home Depot or Lowe's or many other places. Instead of spreading grass seeds, you can lay sod patches wherever you want grass. Ford, who was 36 years old in 1997, and Greg, who was 25, had made plans to go fishing together on a Sunday, April 6th. 1997, in a pond right there at the sod farm where they worked. Greg had also taken along his 26-year-old wife, Kimberly, and their 22-month-old daughter, Miranda. Sometime later that day, Sunday, April 6th, after the fishing trip at the sod farm, James Ford was driving home in his red pickup truck but ran out of gas. He managed to get some help from friends that used chains to haul his pickup truck to a gas station. On the following day, now Monday, April 7, another employee of the sod farm saw something unusual. A blue pickup truck belonging to Greg Malnory was parked out in the middle of the field. What was unusual about that is that he had seen it in that same exact spot the day before, on Sunday. And he knew it belonged to Greg Malnory, who the managers at the sod farm had been trying to reach all morning because the very reliable employee had not shown up for work. And upon further inspection near the pickup truck, the employee discovered a gruesome scene: the battered and dead body of Kimberly Malnory, Greg's wife. A medical examiner would later determine that she had suffered blunt force trauma injuries to her head. The bathing suit Kim was wearing was obviously sliced off of her with a knife, and the presence of semen was found inside her.
Governor DeSantis signed the first death warrant of 2025. 64-year-old James Ford is scheduled to be executed February 13th for the 1997 murders of a Charlotte County couple. He was convicted in 1999, received 2 death sentences. Ford has previously filed several appeals for his life in state and federal court. They were all denied. Ford has just 2 weeks from now to submit a notice of appeal. His scheduled execution comes less than 6 months after Florida's only inmate execution of 2024.
Ford struck first before Greg could react. Ford attacked him with a blunt object and delivered blow after blow to his head. The impact was devastating. Greg, dazed and bloodied, had no time to fight back. In a final act of brutality, Ford slit his throat, ensuring there was no chance of survival. Kimberly, who was injured at that time, escaped and managed to save her daughter by strapping her to the back seat of the truck. However, Ford caught up to Kimberly and subjected her to a horrific assault before ending her life with the same merciless brutality. He executed her with the rifle. The next day morning that the horrors of the night came to light, a worker at the farm arrived early, ready to start the day, but instead of the quiet fields he was used to, he found a crime scene that would haunt him forever. The bodies of Greg and Kimberly lay lifeless, their injuries telling a story of unspeakable violence. He found 22-month-old Miranda alive, who was trapped for more than 18 hours inside the truck. She was dehydrated, weak, suffered insect bites and covered in her mother's blood. Authorities were called immediately, the crime scene was processed, and soon the investigation began. Investigators worked tirelessly to piece together what had happened.
When you look at the evidence in this case, you would think that James Dennis Ford literally had a death wish and wanted to be sent to death row. Remember, this was 1997. By this time, everybody was hearing about DNA science. Listen to this. James Ford was seen together with Greg and Kimberly by multiple witnesses just prior to the killings. Ford was seen later that day by friends that helped tow his pickup truck with blood on his face, hands, and clothing. When asked about it, he told his friends that he had just killed a pig. He was seen the next day with scratches on his face. A .22 caliber rifle that authorities found in a drainage ditch near the gas station where Ford was getting gas for his vehicle and was proven by ballistics to be the murder weapon was a rifle registered to Ford. Blood found on a knife found in Ford's bedroom in his house in Arcadia, Florida, was proven by DNA to be Greg Malnory's blood. Semen found in Kim's body and on her shirt was proven to be Ford's DNA. Talk about a slam dunk case. Greg Malnory had moved from Detroit, Michigan to Charlotte County, Florida as a child. He met Kimberly Ann Parkinson in high school, and they were, in fact, high school sweethearts that later married and had their only child, a daughter named Miranda. Friends and family say that Greg and Kim did not use drugs, had no enemies, and were very faithful to each other. I did communicate with Miranda recently on Facebook Messenger. Miranda will be 30 years old this coming May and still lives in Charlotte County, Florida, where she was raised by her grandparents. Miranda asked to reiterate how she prefers this presentation not be called the James Ford case. She says it's important to remember my mom and dad, not him. As I mentioned earlier, James Ford lived in a home in Arcadia, Florida. Also living in Arcadia, in a rundown area of the town, was Ford's 21-year-old cousin, Kelly Jo Crum, and her 8-month-old baby daughter, Kelsey. By August 11 of the year 1994, about 3 years before James Ford murdered Greg and Kim Malnory, Kelly Jo had packed her bags while planning to move away from that awful neighborhood to move in with her mom in Sebring, Florida. While Kelly Jo was in the process of packing, she was visited by her cousin, James Dennis Ford. And then suddenly, poof, both Kelly Jo and baby Kelsey vanished, never to be seen again. All her packed stuff still in her home. As the last known person to see Kelly Jo and baby Kelsey alive, law enforcement in Florida has always suspected James Ford of foul play in their disappearance, but he was never charged. After seeing what he was capable of following the murders of Greg and Kim Malnory 3 years later, those suspicions took on even greater significance. He has been interviewed, and even though he's practically on his deathbed in a sense, he continues to deny any involvement in his cousin's disappearance. In the meantime, Florida still has Kelly Jo and baby Kelsey listed as missing persons. After learning that James Ford will be executed in February, family and dear friends of Kelly Jo and baby Kelsey have recently posted comments on social media of how they hope and pray that James Ford does the right thing and discloses the location of those bodies.